we've now got DJ Tennis. Give him a warm round of applause, please.
Thank you for having me. First of all, it's an honor. It doesn't happen very often. You can dig and dive into this job, like working with music.
What made you want to DJ yourself in the first place?
Actually, my very first DJing experience came very late because I used to work in music as a promoter, as a manager, as a booking agent, as a producer, soundtrack producer before being a DJ. Actually, I started DJing professionally at the age of 40. I'm 54, so 14 years, not long.
When did you start DJing not professionally?
Not professionally, once you collect music, you kind of DJ all your life in your bedroom. When you collect records, you collect music, the first thing you want is to show music to your friends. So that's how I probably first started DJing here. But this was like my very first record. The first record I bought is right here. And that's probably the first I'm gonna play. Is a Jorge Ben record. It's a Brazilian record called Africa Brazil.
That's a cool record to have as your first record.
Yes, I have to say I grew up in a family that spoiled me a lot. And at the time, of course, 7 years old, I didn't have money. But the very first record I had some money for, and I was heavily influenced by my father's choices. And my father, big collector of Brazilian music. What catch me about this record is a song that's called Ponta de Lança Africano. And it's a track, it's a funk, very driving funk track. It's about a football player. And also in my family, there was like a big tradition of following football. So these two things, like the idea, the ecosystem of like a Brazilian music and football and funk music and African heritage mixed with like Brazilian music was what fascinated all my lives. And it started with this record. So this is why I want to play actually this song.
Yeah, while you line it up, I mean, my first record that I bought was something really, really naff and cheesy by, I think it was Boomtown Rats.
Bob Geldof, no, yes. I mean, that's a good start as well. It's
not as cool as your first.
It's not like, there is actually a lot of my friends was listening to radio hits, and that's the first probably 7-inch was a radio hit. But I have to say, late 70s, early 80s, radio hits, if you think about it, the top 100 of Billboard in 1983 was not that bad.
I mean, yeah, after punk rock, there was the whole kind of post-punk thing. There's also sort of disco, remnants of disco and early house music coming through the early 80s.
Absolutely. So as you can easily listen, it's a very driving funk track. I'm surprised it's been not sampled so much, but the other records from Jorge Ben have been sampled more. But this is an extremely important record because it signed the transition from one of the biggest transition for Jorge Ben from more Brazilian influence music to funk and to African roots that he had. So like it was what is very important. Another big influence that I had, and also because of my family and also because of what I was listening or growing up, reggae has been a very big part of my musical growth. And also beginning when I was making mixtapes for my schoolmates to play at parties, I was using a lot of reggae roots and reggae influences. But this is in particular is by Michael Smith. He died, he was assassinated in the early 80s, like because of his political standing. Like a lot of Jamaican protests come from music. and this track is called Roots.
Youth man, them searching the crevices and corners for them roots.
This is a very particular reggae record. It's not very popular, but the whole record is a narration of what was happening in the late 70s and early 80s in Jamaica. The reason why he was assassinated because he was against the government, against the corruption, against violence. What always attracted me about this movement is because, especially coming out from the 70s and entering the economic explosion and economic boom of all the Western countries, and also the wars, Vietnam, etc., it was always music that was for peace. It was music for connection, community-based. And at the time where the economic boom was happening, there was not so much like that. This is actually, in a way, what happened with the punk music in the late 70s, early 80s. And in the same way, in Jamaica, with of course different roots, a different heritage, happened the same way. So in a way, when we grow up, when we're going to middle school and going to high school, we were all full of debates and principles. This doesn't happen so much anymore in the new generation, I have to say. Now we are like a little bit polarized by social media and our opinion, but at the time, getting together was the way to discuss or debate about things. And reggae was one of the, together with punk and together with all DIY music at the time, it was a moment where people was gathering together and also making music with simple instruments.
I love the fact that you play this sometimes in a house set as well.
Yeah, but if I play this in the middle of a house set, I think all the ecstasies start coming up. And this is what really symbolizes like my growth in a way. And also between 70s and 80s was introduction to a new era. Talking about transition, this album was destroyed by the critique. It was defined as boring record, repetitive, was late 70s. But Larry Levan started one of his sets, the diss track. Automatically, the perspective about what was the record, meaning of this record changed. And then he became one of the most iconic records of dance history because Larry Levan was just playing these tracks on repeat. As you can hear, the rhythm is always the same. He's talking about late 70s, before house music, before techno, of course disco, but disco was made by big orchestras, was a bit more structured. They had choruses, verses. This is flat, repetitive. And this became one of the most iconic records played by Larry Levan at the time. So, still connecting with polyrhythms, African-inspired beats, repetitive rhythms. This was actually always been, and it still is, one of my favorite records, but also one of my favorite artists of all time.
And what's this one now?
Fela Kuti. 13 minutes of polyrhythms, repeating phrases. And also here we're going against the standards of commercial music or mainstream music. There's no verse, there's no chorus. And this record, I played it so much, especially when I was playing in smaller bars. We're talking about one of the most politically advanced, iconic artists of all time. With the DSPs and Spotify, we cannot hear a 13-minute song anymore because it's not gonna hit the algorithm, unfortunately. Yeah, 2.5 minute added vocals in the first 13 seconds. I have to say that I've been very lazy. I didn't put all my collection on Discogs, but I will do with time. I need some help.
There's the man over there.
I have 11,000 records. I think 40% are probably, I don't know where to put them, or probably don't have a use for them anymore. That
You've got to keep this one.
These are records that sign my growth, so it's very important. Now we're shifting completely. We went to beat, groove, rhythm, African influences, transition between DIY and punk, and now we listen to something that I really love, is a French chanson. And Isabelle Mayereau is a very underrated artist.
How did you come across this artist, Isabelle Mayereau?
I live in Paris, and I have to say I fell in love with Serge Gainsboug. And Serge Gainsboug always referenced this beautiful artist, Isabelle Mayereau, as one of the best artists at the time. And if you listen to Serge Gainsboug, which is of course iconic, Brigitte Bardot and Bonnie and Clyde, there is some incredible iconic record from Serge Gainsboug and incredible recordings. The recording technique of Serge Gainsboug was very advanced at the time. Isabelle Mayereau was always in an interview was talking about it and said, okay, I need to buy this record. I bought it and it's actually insane. Orchestration, melody is typical. You can hear also in nowadays French bands like Air, like as you have this use of electric instruments that is so airy and so psychedelic at the same time, but at the same time groovy and rhythmic. That's what also Serge Gainsboug has been. Okay, we just switch completely the vibe now. We jump to 10 years after. We're talking 1983 for me is the best year for modern music that always been. Reason number one, because cheap digital synthesizers were invented. So a lot of people started making music without having necessarily a recording studio, recording at home with a 4-track, etc., etc. A synthesizer that was making everything, like Yamaha DX7, for example, a Chord Poly 800, could make the drums, did everything with one. If you had too knowledge of a couple of words of English, you could also sing in it, try to sing in English, or just fake it, like we did in Italy for Italo Disco.
Did you get really into Italo?
Yeah, that's how I got my DJ name. So the story of Italo Disco, people wants to, why Italo Disco started and became such a global thing. It's like the reality that in Italy we were trying to, for years, we're trying to mimic British and American disco, but they had money, orchestras, singers, recording studios. We didn't have all of that. Record industry didn't want to invest in anything, so as soon as cheap instrumentation came up, all this explosion of this frustration came out with a lot of records produced, and finally, record industry, major labels in Italy started following this and launching this throughout Europe, but it was very peculiar because it was made literally with no money, with the 2 instruments, drum machine and a synth and a vocoder. That's it.
Just goes to show you don't need the biggest studio, or you just need the ideas.
Yes, it became a global movement. Americans started to imitate Italo Disco, Germans as well, synth pop, even Detroit, like Model 500. And if you listen, there is also the very early birth of techno here.
So it's a very eclectic selection you picked out today. Does that represent your current tastes in music also?
I think like 54, like I'm 54 years old. At the end of the day, I got bored, repetitive. Like I started listening to new music, different music. At the end of the day, when you grow, also you go back at what you liked before, and this is the when I received the brief of this interview, I said, okay, what are meaningful records for you? And at the end of the day, more than the record that represent me actually as a DJ, I prefer to bring the records that form me and also help me to get a taste of what I like. And through different years, I always embrace a different kind of music. Like also as a DJ now, I started with I started with hip hop and I moved to disco, and then I started with disco actually. Which is the story of this I was telling before, DJ tennis, because I used to play in a tennis club, and they were throwing party like one of these Victorian with the green fields, golf courts, etc., etc. But I was the DJ of the Saturday night parties. I had a show in a radio station in Palermo, in Sicily, and they asked us, we were training there, and they asked us, who of you has vinyl or dance records? Say me, and I had only Italo Disco at the time. 88 was the end of Italo Disco, the start of Italo House, etc. And the name of the party was DJ Tennis, and people thought it was my name, so they kept calling me like that, and I kept it. Today I still mix all these things together. So this is the start of DJ Tennis, basically.
Well, Manfredi, DJ Tennis, thanks very much for sharing your music today.
Thank you.